Welcome back to another video, guys. I'm not going to give you a long introduction because today's video is pretty dense, but as you guys read from the title, it is about your phone and the detriments that it imposes to you. And let's hop right into it. Dopamine is an endogenous drug produced within the human brain from an expectation, conscious or subconscious, of reward. Dopamine is considered neuromodulatory, meaning that it alters the potency of a signal transmission through our synapses. Dopamine plays a role of allowing you to feel pleasure, satisfaction, and motivation. When expecting reward, dopamine is released from what is called a synaptic vesicle, and neuroreceptors on the receiving end of the synapse uptake and perceive this chemical stimulation, translating it into an electrical signal and ultimately an emotion. On a neurological level, the feeling produced from receiving an A, a 20, a 7, 100% on a test, or a paycheck from a boss, a salary raise, whatever, is dopamine being released and interacting with different parts of your brain. All right, and to really just materialize everything that I just said, to put these ideas, the ones I just went over, into perspective, I'm going to be explaining this basically anatomical depiction of neurons and the synapse. And so this is pretty brief. It's not going to be in too much depth, just the basic essence of what you need to understand. And so basically this right here, the circles in the top half of the image are known as the synaptic vesicles, which contain the neurotransmitters, which in this case are dopamine. Right here we have the synaptic cleft, which is basically the gap between our neurons, and on the receiving end of the synaptic cleft we have these small things right here, which are known as the neuroreceptors, which perceive the chemical signal from the neurotransmitters coming out of the synaptic vesicle and turn it into an electrical signal. All right, and so why do we develop dopamine? Why is it important? What does it do? And evolutionarily speaking, one popular theory to answer these questions suggests that our brains first started producing and developing dopamine as a biological mechanism to elevate our survival and prolong the existence of our species, by associating dopamine and reward to achieving survival milestones, which keep us motivated to keep wanting to be rewarded by releasing dopamine by achieving these survival milestones. And this theory proven by the satisfaction that we feel in consuming food or reaching sexual climax. The surge and triumph you feel from a dopamine release is believed to be, according to this theory, an exploit that keeps our crude brains motivated and craving more of the catalyst causing those dopamine releases. As I just said, we associate two and two together, whether finding a berry bush, hunting down a wildebeest, or meeting a mate. Dopamine has been a central component of human psychology for millennia. Yeah, and so important to mention about the physiology and anatomy of the synapses and neuroreceptors is that neuroreceptors can actually reach a state where dopamine can no longer communicate stimulation. Essentially, neuroreceptors have a threshold or certain amount of dopamine or chemical stimulation from a neurotransmitter that they can handle. I'm actually coining this term myself. I call this a dopamine limit. And if neuroreceptors exceed said thresholds, they may stress and crash, actually resulting in less neuroreceptors to receive these chemical signals from these neurotransmitters, such as dopamine. Now, in modern society, compared to the past, dopamine is stimulated now far more than ever. Modern technology has essentially industrialized hedonic pursuit. this be in the forms of facilitated access to sexual stimulation, improved and radicalized gastronomic services, acquisition of material wealth, further social interaction, which, believe it or not, is actually another catalyst to dopamine release, and of course, of utmost pertinence to this video, through phone usage and social media, which interties with the other ones I just mentioned. So now to get into the premise of this video, why your phone is killing you. See, the reason for which your phone is, quote, killing you is because phone producers, technology companies, have perfected the methods of exploiting dopamine release in their consumers. This desensitizing our pleasure response system, making activities in life feel mundane. Phone producers want to exploit dopamine stimulation in aims of keeping us attached to our phones, so we keep consuming product-related goods or services, if not the products themselves. The methodologies devised by these companies, like the positive social interactions from social media, through expecting novel and entertaining content, potently and frequently stimulate the release of dopamine, causing your neuroreceptors to, in the long term, become desensitized and stressed, essentially atrophying. What tech companies do, phones and social medias, is find ways to constantly keep your dopamine stimulated. These be through strategies like the infinite scroll, big and red galvanizing notifications, to algorithms that scrutiny you to then curate what to display relative to what most captivates your attention, making you and keeping you as immersed as possible into your technological device. And these are all based on the fundamental that you expect something novel, positive, and entertaining to effectuate. And this goes perfectly well with tech devices because the unpredictability of them make it perfect for humans to anticipate and expect a reward, urging the release of dopamine. And so the problem comes when this constant satisfaction of positive social interaction from phone use, and therefore dopamine release, degrades your neuroreceptors in your synapses. You become numbed to the stimulation, and this is how, or one way which your phone is killing you. The constant stimulation from phones causing potent and frequent dopamine release from the expectation of novel and entertaining experiences eventually make you numbed to systematic dopamine releases from things which are less exciting. They are systematic, they're institutionalized in the systems that you live in. This may be in finishing work, finishing your homework, playing sports, or even speaking to friends. This results in what is called a numbed pleasure response. Neurochemical receptors in the synapses cannot handle constant stimulation of dopamine release, so they crash, resulting in less pleasure response from having less receptors to communicate the message of pleasure from dopamine, and ultimately a weakened sensitivity to dopamine. And so the problem in this case arises when this weakened sensitivity is carried to other areas of life. Less dopamine stimulation means that activities like hitting the gym, eating healthy, or reading a book don't feel as satisfying, motivating, or good as they are naturally supposed to, because the dopamine release isn't as frequent nor effective as it is from a phone. In addition to that, neurochemical receptors have essentially atrophied because of the usage of phones. And this is an issue that I find particularly concerning and worrying in regards to our libido. Phones have greatly facilitated access to sexual stimulants resulting in an increase in, quite candidly, unnatural dopamine release, and therefore a numbed reward system, and thus stronger cravings, which in this case translate themselves in the forms of people now adopting extreme quirks and just weird fetishes. The fact that you guys are watching this video in the first place demonstrates the hegemony that social media has on you, and since the video is most likely being watched on a phone, further proves my point. So to recap, dopamine comes from expecting reward. And when you use your phone, you expect positive social interaction through novel and entertaining content, so therefore dopamine is stimulated. But because phones are so good in keeping you attached and in stimulating dopamine, you begin to release too much for your neuroreceptors to handle. So they begin to crash, resulting in less neuroreceptors to transmit an electrical signal of reward in our reward system, causing a numbed pleasure response, which ultimately means other activities in life that don't stimulate as much dopamine as phones do begin to feel dull and tedious. Therefore, there's no reason to do them, leaving you worse off. You feel less reward from a daily activity, potentially causing you to perform worse and feel less motivated to complete said activity. That feeling of wanting to put down your phone, but the abruptive one more post when you're waiting or expecting something satisfying to show up on Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, YouTube, whatever, which actually never does, as you want to keep expecting and waiting for that one more post to show up, is actually dopamine just anchoring you to your device. Or the other infamous one is, well, let me check my phone real quick, with actual no real incentive to. And additionally to the dopamine dilemma from phones, this is just one of many factors as to why your phone is killing you. A huge detriment of phones is that they generally don't allow your mind to wander. And what a wandering mind does is generate novel, creative, and unique ideas while also allowing you time to reflect. A wandering mind problem solves, innovates, helps manage emotion, relieves stress, engages in, of course, metacognition, future planning, and more. Though being stuck on your phone scrolling through social media doesn't allow you to wander off and actually go into this state. Furthermore, cell phone use is also linked to reduce sleep time and quality. Social media use is linked to reduce attention span from conditioning you to watch short clips, videos, and pictures lasting for seconds at a time. And phones have also been linked to causing depression. Additionally, social media platforms tend to be filled most with glorified and picturesque content from its users, resulting in the development of unrealistic ideals and views. Anecdotally speaking, I've also realized that phones greatly limit real-life social interaction, results in worse posture. I mean, you're like this the whole entire day, dude. They are incredibly distractive, and they oftentimes lead to cyberbullying. However, to end this video off, phones aren't and they shouldn't be considered the T100, the Skynet of our humanity. Phones and technology are now the backbone of a modern and globalized world that we live in. They allow us to further communicate, perhaps leading to more social and physical activity, offsetting what I just said. It's totally valid, it's an argument. They organize our lives. I mean, alarm clocks suited without them, I wouldn't know what to do. They make information free and accessible to anyone and everyone. They promote human safety and welfare. I can call an ambulance wherever I am. There's a GPS tracker on me at all times. They allow us to immortalize life's moments in the forms of videos and pictures. They also provide us with a platform to express ourselves, which is kind of meta because that's what I'm doing right now. And phones and technology have also created tons of jobs and industries within domestic and the global economy. Also, depending on your values, it can be seen as advantageous in that phones relieve boredom. Though scientifically, as I just said, boredom is good for you because when you're bored, your mind wanders, and I just stated the benefits of what a wandering mind is. Yeah, and that's pretty much it from me. If you enjoyed, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, put your noties on, and I'll catch you guys next time.